The Red River flooded parts of North Dakota and Minnesota primarily because of a thaw of a large amount of winter snow and river ice in March and April of 1997. This was unusual because the thaw happened much earlier than normal, it lasted a long time, and it covered a large area. Normally, the snow and ice thaw gradually, so flooding doesn't usually get out of control. Besides this, there was a large amount of snowfall and river ice buildup the year of the flood. After this, there was a large amount of rainfall that added to the already abnormal amount of water in the Red River Basin, and then another warm period that further melted ice and snow. The Flint River in Georgia flooded primarily because of a tropical storm named Alberto that hung over the area for over a week in 1994. In this time, more than 40 inches of rainfall occurred, and in some places, 24 inches fell in just 24 hours. The causes of these floods were different because the Red River flood was caused mostly by snow and ice melt, and only secondarily by rainfall. The Flint River flood was caused primarily because of rainfall.
There are a couple of natural causes that are causing an increase in the magnitude of each flood. One is that since the last glaciation, there's two different Manitoba. There's the northern Manitoba and the southern Manitoba, and I guess the northern Manitoba is rising faster than the southern Manitoba, so the ground level isn't as even anymore, which means that the river valley has a lower gradient, so the water's flowing slower. The second is that really a lot of the flooding for the Red River is caused by the melting of the ice and the snow, and with all the global temperatures changing, there's a lot more snow, it seems, and then it all melts faster. And then when you add in human bridges and whatnot, which ice dams can then build off of, and then a lot of that starts affecting the river, and it floods more often.
The main human interferences on the Red River were issues with housing developments on the floodplain itself, and dikes and levees that were built right before the warnings of the floods were given. The flood itself wasn't caused by human interferences. Houses were destroyed, businesses were destroyed, crops and fields were messed up, and other than that, just complete devastation, but nothing caused by human interferences. The Flint River was a little bit different. There were a lot of dams that gave out. None of them were major, but small dams along smaller creeks and tributaries gave out, and that caused a lot of flooding farther downstream. Another big human interference is the issue of bridges that are being built along the Red River. With the ice flows and things like that that are caused just during spring thaws, a lot of ice can get caught and jammed up underneath bridges. And as development kind of increases in the North Dakota area and Minnesota, more and more bridges are being built along these rivers, which are causing these human-made dams when the ice builds up. The Flint River has a different problem. The forests along the edges of the Flint River kind of act as a natural absorber of water when the river naturally flows over its banks. But right now we're seeing so much overdevelopment along those areas that the houses are kind of being built on these natural sponges, and the river's not being able to absorb along those areas. So flooding just kind of seeping into these communities. That, most of them were natural processes, and humans didn't have a big interference on these two floods.
In regards to the Red River flooding, as far as for recommendations go, as far as for preventing future floods or preparation for floods, they did use clay levee systems, which are more temporary than permanent. They did use over 1 million sandbags, which they made just to hold back the floodwaters during the flooding. An actual quote from a Fargo resident was, "I choose to live on the river. I'm not looking for sympathy. I bought it for views and I love it here." Some recommendations to residents from public officials, even from others, would be to either completely relocate off of the floodplains or to implement more of a permanent levee system, which would obviously prevent damages from floods, or even just preparing for future floods, which seems to be a reoccurring problem as far as for regional thawing go from your winter storms.
In regards to the flooding of the Flint River and surrounding areas in 1994, it is strongly recommended that all local residents have not only purchased emergency broadcasting radios and other goods and supplies, but also create and utilize a strong disaster plan, which may also include the temporary relocation if necessary.